We brought you a story earlier this week about a cop who was illegally working with a repo man on somebody else's property, ends up shooting the man, the homeowner on his own property. He is claiming that he has a defense, stand your ground, at somebody else's house. Well, here it is.
This video caught on a neighbor's doorbell camera captures the moment the Perkins family says police fatally shot 39-year-old Steve Perkins.
Police, get off me!
The warning appearing to come immediately before police opened fire, killing the husband and father. The deadly confrontation around 2 a.m. September 29th stemmed from a tow truck driver trying to repossess Perkins' truck. Police say the driver arrived earlier, but left when Perkins flashed a gun, then came back hours later, accompanied by Decatur police.
They started firing before they even got the full first command out of their mouth.
The department states Perkins brandished the weapon towards an officer, causing the officer to fire. His family's attorney says Perkins had no idea it was police in his front yard.
It doesn't matter whether he had a weapon or not. He never was given an opportunity to comply, and if he had a weapon, he was well within his rights to carry a firearm.
Put him up, full mask. He brandished his weapon to a trespasser who was illegally operating with a repo agent outside of the context of statute. A judge has now ruled on this in the update, as we reported last week. Mac Marquette, a former Alabama cop, was seeking to use the stand your ground defense to justify fatally shooting 39-year-old Stephen Perkins outside of his home. Now, that request has been denied by a judge. The judge has declared, sir, you were simply a trespasser that day. Judge Charles Elliot, who ran for his seat as a Republican, you heard me right, concluded there was insufficient evidence that former Decatur, Alabama officer Mac Marquette, 25, acted in self-defense on a late summer evening in 2023 when he repeatedly shot 39-year-old Stephen Perkins outside of his home. The judge said he based his decision on two questions. Did Marquette act within the scope of his job as a police officer? Two, were his actions consistent with what a reasonable officer would do in that situation? Both of those answers are hell no. Here's why. Number one, Marquette was not operating in his confined role as an officer. State law prohibits officers accompanying what's called basically an aggressive repo without court order. So if you do it anyway, you are now operating outside of the boundaries of statute. Second question, would somebody else do this? I mean, a reasonable, objective person? No, because other cops were there and they did not shoot the homeowner. The answer first question, pretty straightforward. Marquette and 3 other officers were dispatched, okay, to help Caleb Combs after he called the police and accused Perkins of pointing a gun at his chest when Combs tried to repossess his truck. Combs told police he wanted to retry the seizure, but said, quote, would not go back alone. Alabama law, however, has a remedy, okay? You got to get a judge's authorization if there was a breach of peace during an attempted seizure. That did not happen in this case, which weakens Marquette's argument. And you have to believe that if this is a culture practice, even though it is outside of law, there may be money exchanged privately to assist these individuals contrary to the law. Elliot wrote that the officers had the authority to approach Perkins' property, to park nearby, but they did not have cause. Quote, once they viewed that no crime was occurring, to enter his property. Had they behaved as investigators and made contact with Perkins, their claim of self-defense would have been easier to advance. Since they failed to do that, Elliot viewed Marquette and the other officers as trespassers, acting outside of their authority as cops. The man pointed his gun or brandished his gun or had his gun because trespassers were on his property, period. Something that any of us in that situation would do to protect our families. There's more. Back in March, prior to this decision, a motion filed with the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals by Marquette's attorneys says they heard, now get this, from reliable sources that Judge Elliot privately told a Decatur police lieutenant who is a state subpoena witness and subject to the case's gag order of his intention to deny Officer Marquette's immunity hearing because of extrajudicial concerns, end quote. Marquette alleged that he learned about Judge Elliot's predetermination because the DPD lieutenant spoke about his conversation with the judge in a setting wherein it was heard by others who in turn told Marquette. The filing said, come on now, boo-boo, this ain't gonna work. I mean, what you doing? This will not work. First of all, judges are able to weigh extrajudicial evidence. It's within the doctrine. Second, hell, 90% of judges make up their mind before they come to that bench. You already know that. But it's fine as long as it works to prosecute individuals harshly and overcharge and sentence. Now, after hearing about this conversation, he's a Republican now, okay, who made the right legal decision. After hearing about this conversation, the defense decided to file a motion asking Judge Elliot to remove himself from the case. How dare you act like a judge and talk like one? So he refused without even granting a request for the dismissal hearing. You gotta like this guy's style, man. The defense alleges that Judge Elliot's conduct included conversations with the defense lawyer, the Decatur police lieutenant, other judges and prosecutors in the case violate several judicial ethics standards and suggests he is not impartial about the case. Elliot denied those claims according to court records. So jurors will be left to decide whether Marquette was at Perkins' house to keep the peace or whether he acted reasonably when applying deadly force. The officer's trial is scheduled to begin June 9th, but that could be delayed if the defense appeals the judge's immunity ruling. It should not be this difficult. We're having hearings to determine if we should have a hearing. And there's an innocent dead black male who was simply at home. Okay, this is when you see the underbelly. One of their own, and I say this loosely, they would expect a Republican judge to have a different conclusion legally. But this man actually weighed the right evidence. He's not there to weigh all of these other determinative factors of your personality and what you were trying to do and what you wanted to do. He weighed the law. What say you?
Well, in this case, first of all, let me say my condolences to the Perkins family for the loss of life and the murder of their son, husband, and family member. When I was watching that video, I thought it was Call of Duty. The way those shots rang out, that wasn't 1, 2, that was a pop, 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 pop. That was John Morant finger shooting on the court. What was that? That was a real thing that just happened on the man's own property while he was engaging in his First Amendment, Second Amendments, through all the amendment rights just to be at home on his own property where you should have the most safety and protections, not just from criminal activity, but also from breach of the law. What were the police doing there? They were colluding with the repo man, and that's what happens when governments work for businesses and not the individuals and citizens and people that they are actually supposed to be protecting and serving. This was corruption at a high level. Now, let's go also to the idea that a white Republican judge said you're racist. Then my guy, you're racist. Like when the white Republican judge says you're racist, you're racist. When the white Republican judge is telling you you're guilty of doing a racial heinous act, this is the truth. It can't get more clear cut than that. And you see, even when they thought they had a favorable judge, as soon as the ruling doesn't go their way, they try to get rid of that judge because now all of a sudden the system doesn't work. What do you mean? You're that implicable in this particular act. You're guilty, my friend. You are guilty.
Yeah, and you can't dismiss the cause and effect. We have become so affixed with the material world that we forget how petty it is in comparison to life. This man is dead because of a vehicle. Let's start there. Compounded by a culture of corrupt policing that has been unchecked. And then echoed by a justice system that has difficulty navigating the proper prosecution of said cop. All right, we're going to bring you updates on that story.